Welcome to month 2 of Cash or Crash, which is my year-long experiment where in 2026 I'll start a new business every single month and document the entire journey publicly. Now for this month, this is month 2, we are building a junk removal business from scratch in 28 days. Now this is the week 1 weekly recap. I'm going from the start of the month through February 8th. And we're going to dig in. This week has been awesome. And I'm going to preface it by this. Last month in January, we did Facebook reselling. And then this month we're doing junk removal. I didn't intend for this to happen, but if I do junk removal correctly, I should be able to acquire different types of junk that I could then use as a reseller, which could then benefit the skill set I learned last month. I didn't see these businesses always stacking skills upon each other, but in this case it has. So here's how we do these recaps. We go over top highlights, education hypothesis, time spend, money breakdown, and then we wrap it up for the week. So let's dig into some of the top highlights. First of all, one of the highlights that I had this first week is that I love the challenge of starting something from scratch. I love having an infinite amount of ways to get started and trying to narrow in on what's the most important pieces. And I think it's really interesting because different businesses will require different things, and we'll touch base on that in just a little bit. But here's what I learned from last month that I try to incorporate for week 1 of this month. Is last month, I just tried to get going right away. So I did a little research, but then I just tried to get some experience. And I thought that was the right way to go. But by the end of last month, I felt there was still a little bit of a learning curve that I really needed. And now for junk removal, I know there's a big learning curve, much bigger than just flipping things on Facebook Marketplace. And so what I did, and this was one of my highlights, is I know nothing about junk removal. So I just immersed myself for a few hours. That I said, I'm not allowed to do anything. I just have to watch and get educated. And my intention of doing this was to find who are some of the big players that teach people how to do this. And I also wanted to figure out, are there similar things that every single video on how to build a junk removal business talks about? Because if there are similarities, and I'm taking notes and comparing these videos, if there are similarities, then I can focus on just those things to maximize my time and effort in this challenge. And so that's exactly what I did. After a few hours, I found this guy who had built $1 million plus junk removal business according to one of his videos, and he happened to be in Los Angeles, in Southern California. I was like, boom. I also found out that this dude happened to offer coaching calls. So I made the choice to invest in mentorship on day 1. I ended up having to call on like day 3, 4, or 5 or whatever, but I invested into booking a coaching call with him because I thought in my mind, I have limited time. I have a very specific limited budget. I need to not waste time and not waste money. And the fastest thing that I can do is to learn from someone and see if they have a roadmap for the best way to start this thing off. And so that's exactly what I did. And so a highlight was not only learning from what I could improve upon in January, but it was also hiring a mentor right away and booking a call with him. Now, is he the only person I'm going to do this with? No, I'm going to try to do this with several other people as well. But I wanted to do this right away. And it was so valuable. I recorded it with my phone, threw it into ChatGPT, had AI summarize everything, and build out a step-by-step roadmap from that. That was huge. I also found another great video with people, and they actually had a 90-day roadmap to your first 10K month of junk removal. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Let me see if I could break this down and see what I could do in 30 days. Because here was another top highlight. I realized I may know nothing about junk removal, but I have such great skills in the how to start a business realm that I can take my skill set, learn the specialty of the trade, and then boom, I know that I can make things happen quickly, effectively, and efficiently due to my prior experience and my network. That was a huge highlight for me. Now, in terms of execution, I also wanted to make sure this first week was I executed at a very high rate and a high speed. And so after I got this roadmap, instead of trying to get more and more information and study and try to learn more and more, which I still need to do, and you'll hear about that in education hypothesis section, but I need to start executing. And so we came up with a name, we built a logo for it, we got the website, we got the email, and this one you kind of need a little digital footprint to get going. So that was a big highlight. And then we also executed on a bunch of foundational basics. I got general liability insurance quotes. I researched how do I actually get a truck because I don't own a truck, right? So what are my options? I learned what a transfer station was. You literally got to know what that is. Kind of. I'm still learning about it, but essentially it's the place where I'm able to dump the junk that I get. I also realized that there are different types of junk. I'm not going to do certain types. I'm not interested in hazardous waste. I'm going to focus on this month on very easy, very clear types of junk removal, garage cleanouts, furniture, storage units, etc. And I believe that that's going to be the best way that I could spend my time from what I learned. So this was all awesome. And another top highlight is my dad's involved in this, which is so cool. I'm pumped to be able to do things with him and to be inspired by him and to learn from his brilliance, as well as to have somebody that I can go back and forth with and have a little bit of fun with. Let's move on to the education and hypothesis in week 1. So let's start with the education. This business, building a junk removal business, is significantly different than reselling for the sake of the fact that it is a traditional business with a lot of specific needs to get started. You need to have a truck in order to do junk removal, right? You need to have general liability insurance so that if you scratch someone's floor, you're not screwed. Whereas with Facebook reselling, I could just post something on Facebook, someone comes to my house, and we do an exchange of services. Okay, so the barrier to entry is slightly higher. And the knowledge to entry is also higher as well. And so these are things that I really had to spend some time digging into. And I'm currently recognizing that there is a dance between learning and doing. And this is something that I've already noticed happen a few different times. And so I think it's really important to recognize that I need to learn so that I can be competent and do a great job. But I also have to recognize that I'm not going to be the best junk removal person on my first junk removal job. That's okay. I can learn as I go. But if I get stuck in just learning and not doing, I'm not going to be able to ever make progress. And if I just do without learning, I'm going to make too many mistakes that could cause bigger problems. So it's a dance between learning and doing. Now, to contradict myself a little bit around how there's a lot of specific needs to be able to build this business, I'm going to focus on the doing side, which you could start with hustle and outreach for anything to grow, to any business to really grow and get started. But if you really want to grow it to the next level, you're going to need to have a brand, do everything formally, do all of these things so that you can get people that you don't already know to get invested in what it is that you're doing. So I think that I'm learning so much, which I'm having a ton of fun. And I hope that I've been getting a lot of outreach on people saying that it's really helping them hear how I think about all this stuff. So if you're enjoying this and you're finding value in hearing this thought process, then let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Now, here's the next thing that I learned here is most businesses get started with a group of people that you already know. Oftentimes, your first customers in any type of business, you're going to start with your network or friends of friends. And that's exactly what I recognized for this is I'm not going to start by just randomly finding clients who find my website because they won't find that randomly. Where I'm starting with is who in my friend group or who of friends of my friends need what I have. And I'm going from that space, acquaintances. And then from there, I'm going to branch out into other forms, but still keep it very clear on direct outreach. I'm not going to go straight to paid advertising right away, but I'm going to do things where I can have the most touch points as fast as possible. Another thing that was really interesting that I observed is that Facebook actually was one of my biggest sources of engagement for this challenge. I started posting some things on Facebook and people got really interested in it. And so I'm interested to see if this is just like a one-off thing or if Facebook is actually going to be a great place for this type of thought experiment. Now, the last thing that I really learned from this is I have so much more to learn in this space. I still feel like I don't know anything about junk removal, and I'm probably going to make a lot of mistakes. But I'm not going to allow my lack of knowledge or my fear of making mistakes stop me from trying to get started and get those customers. Because the goal of this challenge is to make money. And I'm going to do whatever I can to make money. And I'm also going to try to do it in the best possible way that I can. So I have to determine, as we move forward in this challenge, what pieces, what items, which tasks are the best for me to spend my time and energy on. For example, there are things that I have to learn, like What's it like to actually go to a transfer station and dump your junk? I don't know what that's like until I do it. How to properly price. I probably won't have perfect pricing when I'm starting. I'm learning and trying to get different things from people and pricing sheets, and I'm calling competitors and finding out how do they price. And I'm just going to give a baseline thing. I may overquote, I may underquote, but you know what? I'm going to quote. And so these are things that I have so much more to learn. So much more to learn. And to be fully vulnerable on this, this is going to be hard to be very successful at this in 28 days. February is a shorter month, all right? And it's going to be a challenge, especially with the time limit and the budget limit that we have and the fact that I don't even have a truck, right? However, I have a plan in place, and it's time that we're going to execute, and I hope to have some really great updates moving forward. So here's my hypothesis. After week one, my hypothesis is that starting a junk removal business is going to be an absolutely fantastic idea, regardless of the results, and I'm going to want to pursue this at a higher level following this. I also have a hypothesis that I'm going to have to miss out on some early foundational steps that I would normally take if I was building a true business from the ground up, and I have to choose those very intelligently of which foundational pieces am I going to skip over for the 28-day challenge versus what I would do if I were building this for a year long or longer to see if this is actually a sustainable way to grow a business. That's going to be determined over time. But I definitely believe that there will be foundational pieces I'm going to skip. So let's get into the good stuff here. Here's the time in week one. I spent 8 hours in week one doing this. I spent a lot of that time on education, research, and building the basics for the brand. There's not a whole lot other than to go in that. We already talked about what that is, but I spent 8 hours of the allocated 10 that I have for this. Most of it came on the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Most of my time was spent there because I was so busy during the early part of the week. Let's talk about the financial side of things. This is one of the things where with a foundational element, I'm kind of skipping over a few things that would immediately break my $1,000 budget. But for the sake of the 28 days, my intention is to be seen as legitimate enough to acquire gigs and to get my first handful of gigs done to learn the trade and see if it's something worth pursuing. So expenses, I spent $43.19. That was on the coaching call along with the web domain from GoDaddy. All right. Revenue, $0. We did not this month, or this week, generate a single order. Why? Well, I was figuring out what the hell I was actually doing. Now, week two, we're hoping to do it. And here's what's really cool. Just from posting about it, we got to talk about projected revenue. Just from posting about it, we already have a handful of leads of friends and friends of friends, which is really, really fantastic. And I believe, hopefully, when this comes out, this will come to fruition. But I believe we already have a gig from a family member who needs to get rid of a bunch of stuff, and they want to be our first job. And so it's great because we'll be able to charge something for this, and I'll be able to get real hands-on experience. I'll get a review from this person, hopefully, assuming I do a good job. But it should be our first gig, which gets me in the game and really learning what that's all about. So there you have it. That is the week one recap of building a junk removal business. We are done with 8 days, and now we have 20 days left of the month to start generating revenue and to start building this thing out. I'll see you next week with the next update. Make sure to follow along. Make sure to follow along on TikTok and Instagram at Jake Kelfer. That's where I'm posting up all the daily updates as well. So if you want to follow along there, connect with me on those platforms. Otherwise, I'll see you next week for the week 2 update.